All right, so I want to thank everybody for coming out this afternoon to CMA Alberta's Town Hall meeting. We have decided to go viral, if you will, in a good way, to make sure that we can get the information out to all of our membership, regardless of if they can make a town hall or not. So I thank you all for coming. We're going to go through what is an instrumental decision that must be made by our membership in moving forward for the accounting profession in Canada. And go through a presentation and then open it up for questions and answers. One of the biggest things, and we'll dispel some urban myths as we go along. One of the biggest things that is really important to note is that no decision to this point has been made. If you go onto the forums, you'll see that there are comments that say, well, this is a done deal and they're going to do it anyways. And we're here to say, no, that's not true. What we're trying to do is get the communication out there so that membership will tell us, yes, there's enough interest in moving forward to build a concrete proposal. Now, a concrete proposal amongst two organizations that each have a provincial counterpart is not easy to put together, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of resource. We don't want to use those resources if our membership ultimately at the beginning says, no, we're not on for this. So that's why we're starting with the consultative approach and process as we move forward. And that's a difference from 2004. You know, we talk about, and I have a lot of members go, well, we keep coming back to this, and yes, we do, because eventually we're going to get it right, right? Because it's not going away. Amalgamation and merger was brought up in the 80s, in the 90s, in 2004, and again in 2011. And every time that our economy shifts or our market shifts, we become more global, we have to take a look at this. New regulations come down that are being imposed on Canadian accountants. We have to take a look at that and go, are we doing the best thing for our profession by maintaining 3 separate designations in Canada? And understanding that we are the only profession in Canada who does that. If you're a doctor and then you specialize. If you're a lawyer and then you specialize. If you're an engineer and you specialize. But we put the specialization in our designations. And we have to take a look at, is that the right way to do this? So we're going to talk about the recent talks between the CAs and the CMAs, exploring uniting through a creation of a new professional designation. So we're going to just run through the rationale for change, why we think it's important to come and visit this again, right? And take a look at this from a membership perspective. Our approach, what we see as the benefits to be for members, for employers, for students, and what our process is moving forward. Okay. So why a united profession? Well, it is more efficient and more effective than the status quo. I don't think there's anybody who can deny this. You know, we've got provincial offices for the CAs and the CMAs. We've got a lot of dual process. We spend a lot of marketing money trying to get students from each other, money that could be better placed working with the membership, right? Making sure that they have the resources that they need. Understanding that from a growth perspective, we fight for marketing, we fight for recruiting. So if I get 500 students to come in this year, that's 500 students, but I have 7,000 members. So is it the best use of money from a marketing perspective to spend millions of dollars competing against each other while the membership sits on the other side? What's the benefit to them at that point? Right. So better able to protect and serve the public interest. I always look at the Alberta example from this. Jane Halford, my CA counterpart, and I were talking about staff contingents a couple of weeks ago. And I said, well, how many staff do you have? And she said, well, I've got 55. And I said, okay. And she goes, but you know, probably 2/3 of them are regulation. Licensing and regulation, 2/3 of their staff. She says, well, how many staff do you have? I said, I've got around 36 staff. She goes, how many are regulation? I went, I have a guy. But the reason being is our demographics are so different. With CMAs in Alberta, with less than 4% of our membership in public accounting, we have one person who's in charge of regulation. And that's fine, and we meet those standards. However, we're already working with CAs, right, on joint practice reviews, on discipline tribunals, on delivering PD for public accounting, so that we don't have to spend a lot of resource trying to develop a program that less than 4% will take. Right? So we already work with the CAs in that regard. On the flip side, the CAs are seeing issues on their end. When you take into account that approximately 65% of the CA membership is not working in public accounting. They aren't working in audit and assurance. They're working in management. And when they get into management, they have to take on additional skills that weren't taught within their own programs, right, which was focused on the front end audit and assurance. They see that we protect the public trust on that end. That's what our programming is geared towards. That's what our specialty is. So combined, we really can protect the public trust regardless if we're talking public accounting or management or working in industry. And that's our #1 mandate for both designations. Right? Anything we put out there, we have to protect the public trust. Also vitally important in Alberta that we maintain our public accounting rights. Even though it's 4%, when you look at provinces such as Ontario where they're spending millions of dollars to try to get public accounting rights for and equality for their members, we want to make sure that we can maintain that. Okay? Better able to enhance services to members and to our businesses. And we know that to be so. We know that from a united front and even a united branding, we're going to eliminate a lot of marketplace confusion. We do hear students will say, there's no marketplace confusion. And my answer always is, anytime you see an ad that says CA, CMA, CGA may apply, there's marketplace confusion. Where's the differentiation? Right? The employer's not seeing it. Now, that's not at the senior level role, and we know that. That's at the junior level role. At the senior level role, your designation gets you in the door, and then the other skill sets that you bring are what are going to make you move within an organization. Right? So when we get into the arguments of tagging and we talk about what that looks like, and I got a question from a gentleman the other day that says, well, won't that, if we tag and then you have a new CPA 10 years from now that's not tagged, will that set up a second class designation, if you will? And I said, well, only if you figure that in 10 years you're going to be competing with a freshly minted CPA for a junior level role. And if you are, then you might have bigger problems. Right? From a career trajectory path, that's not going to be where you are. Right? So a lot of that is just knowledge and trying to get through some of those complications. Complexity and convergence. Canadian accountancy operates in an insane system. We have 40 accounting entities in Canada. Now in Alberta, we are very fortunate. The CGAs, the CAs, and the CMAs got together and we developed RAPA, Regulated Accountants Professions Act. We all follow the same regulations. But we're the only province that does that. So that's creating problems even amongst our own membership, as well as huge problems when we're trying to recruit from overseas. It's hard enough explaining a program, but it's really tough when you go, okay, but if you're in Ontario, here's what you'll have to follow. If you're in Quebec, here's what you'll have to follow. If you're in British Columbia, here's what you'll have to follow. And we've seen those issues. You know? So the different legislations create issues for us. The Public Accountants Council of Ontario has recently filed an exemption for public accounting, which states that if you weren't trained in Ontario in public accounting, you can't be a public accountant in Ontario. Now, the only reason they can do that is because we have different legislation. If we had one consistent legislation across the country, this wouldn't be an issue, right? So from a mobility perspective, not even talking international mobility, from a domestic mobility situation, this makes sense. Okay. We have significant convergence, and we know this. We know that CMAs and CGAs are expanding into public accounting. We see that all the time. Firms now are moving more towards recruiting, even at the polytechnic level, whereas 5 years ago that wasn't happening. And the reason that's happening is because domestically, within the next 5 to 10 years, we will not be able to fill our pipelines.